Paschatya Deshadhani. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gurudev ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So, this is a wonderful verse. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. And we'd like to seek your blessings so that we can try to understand the glories of the greatest Acharya that has ever existed. Srila Prabhupada, his appearance day today. So I wanted to just recite this verse from the Bhagavad Puran in the first canto, first chapter and 15th verse. Incredible verse. Yat pada samshaya shuta munaya samasa
Prasamayana Satya Punanti Upashista Svardhuni Aponushrisivaya. O Sutta, those great sages who have completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord can at once sanctify those who come in touch with them, whereas the waters of the Ganges can sanctify only after prolonged use.
So this is glorifying the devotees and how they can, just even once meeting them, completely sanctify sinful souls like ourselves. Whereas the water of the Ganga, we would need to take lots of baths before we can become sinless. But it shows the power of the holy men, the great sages, the great spiritual masters. Oh yeah, so we've got a little presentation about Srila Prabhupada. Some devotees may not be so much aware, and even if we are aware, it's always good to just remind ourselves of Srila Prabhupada's glories. Srila Prabhupada was born on 1st of September 1896, the day after Sri Krishna Janmashtami. So that's why we're celebrating today, day after Sri Krishna Janmashtami, in Calcutta. His father, known as Gaur Mohan De, and his mother was Rajani, and they named him Abhay Charan. Abhay means fearless, and Charan means one who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. At the time of his birth, and if any devotees would like to comment at any time, please feel free to do that. This is actually our spiritual master, our Shiksha Guru. He is a Shiksha Guru of the whole world, and he belongs to us, and we're his grandchildren. The father can be a little hard on the child because of the training that has to be given. But the grandfather, he's very loving. So our spiritual master can be hard on us, but our grand spiritual master is very affectionate. So we can get so many blessings from Srila Prabhupada. So he's our grand spiritual father. So please don't hesitate if there's anything that you would like to comment about Srila Prabhupada as we're going through the presentation. And then I was thinking devotees may want to read an offering to Srila Prabhupada, or just give your realizations about how he has impacted your lives. Certainly, in our cases, the impact is phenomenal. He's the one person who's completely changed our direction of travel. So we owe him everything. Astrologer preparing his horoscope revealed that this child, when he reaches the age of 70, will cross the ocean, become a great teacher of religion, and establish 108 temples. And actually, that's what happened, which is incredible. Srila Prabhupada set out to America in 1965 and he established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. At the age of actually 70, or 69 he left. He celebrated his 70th birthday on the cargo ship going to America. And very briefly traveled around the world 14 times, established more than 100 temples, and initiated more than 10,000 disciples into Hare Krishna. So I wanted to... Yeah,
so today is actually the day he actually set foot on the Jaladuta to leave India for America. And this is a short article on Srila Prabhupada's homepage. Let's read that to you.
Although we're going to do childhood stuff first anyway. So
okay, no, because you just mentioned it.
I know, but this is a summary.
All right.
Okay? We can do it later. So actually, I'll ask some devotees to read, if you don't mind. Maybe Janaki. Srila Prabhupada always spoke of his early childhood with great fondness. And here are some of the recollections of his childhood from his books and conversations. So, Janaki, would you like to read these?
Maybe someone else can. Haribol, sorry.
Oh, you're working?
Yeah. Just in case I have to do something in between.
No problem.
Yeah. Haribol.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Karuna Bandar, would you like to read?
Yes, Prabhu, I read. My father was a pure devotee of the Lord, and when I was only 4 or 5 years old, he gave me a couple of murtis of Radha and Krishna. In a playful manner, I used to worship these deities along with my sister, and I used to imitate the performances of a neighboring temple of Radha Govind. By constantly visiting this neighboring temple and copying the ceremonies in connection with my own deities of play, I developed a natural affinity for the Lord.
And this is just a lovely painting somebody's done. And there's Gaur Mohan Dey, his father, and there's Abhay Chand. And they had family deities, and I think they were called Radha Govindji. Is that right? Radha Govindji? And he was born actually in a very high level Brahmin family. And they were well-to-do, the overall family. And they were well reputed in Calcutta to have bhakti within their blood. Especially they would worship this beautiful deities of Radha Govindji. Okay. Please carry on, Maaji.
I remember when I was only about 1 year old, there was a great Sankirtan in our house, and I also joined the dancing party. And I was singing up to their knees, very small, so I remember those days. In Kolkata, there was a very virulent type of plague epidemic in 1898. So Kolkata became devastated. All people practically left Kolkata. Daily, hundreds and hundreds of people were dying. I was 1 year old or 1.5 years old. So one Babaji, he organized Sankirtan, Hare Krishna Sankirtan, all over Kolkata. And in the Sankirtan, all people, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Parsi, everyone joined. And they were going road to road, street to street, entering in every house. So the plague subsided. This is a fact. Everyone who knows history of Kolkata know that the plague was subsided by Sankirtan movement.
Interesting, interesting that, because this plague was very devastating, especially in Bharat. It killed so many millions, I believe. So it's interesting how Prabhupada recollects that, even though he was so small, and recollects that Sankirtan was the answer. And it didn't matter, one was Hindu, Muslim, Christian, everybody together would do this Sankirtan, chanting of the holy names in the streets. So it's very, very interesting. You'd like to carry on, Mataji?
Yes, of course. In my childhood, when I was 1 1.5 years old, I suffered from typhoid. And the doctor, Kartika Chandra Bose, he said, please give him chicken juice. So my father refused. No, no, we cannot. No, no, he has to be given. Now he has become very weak. No, no, I cannot allow. Don't mind. I shall prepare in my own house and send you simply. So it was sent from his doctor's house. And when it was given to me, immediately I began to vomit. And my father threw it away. And when the doctor asked that this was the no, no, then don't bother. My father's income was at most 300 rupees, so we were not very rich men, but we had no want. Father was maintaining his family, getting children married, distributing the wealth, everything very nice. And we never felt any want. In this mango season, because father saw to it that there must be a full basket of mangoes daily for the children. So we were jumping, playing, and eating mangoes. When I was 6 years old, my father gave me a Rath and encouraged to observe functions such as the Rath Yatra and Doli Yatra ceremonies. I was performing the Rath Yatra in my neighborhood. He used to spend money liberally for distributing prasad to us children and our friends. I received this training from the very beginning. Somehow or other, I had this spark of Krishna consciousness, and my father detected me.
Thank you, Maji. Very interesting. So from a young age, and actually it said that he would organize his friends as well, and they would have quite a festival. And that was when he was tiny. So, of course, Srila Prabhupada brought this Rath Yatra festival from, if you like, Orissa or Bengal, and he brought it to the whole world. Now there are Rath Yatras in practically every major city around the world. So we can see how he very kindly took this to this early in his lifetime, and he continued with it till the very, very end. And he brought it out for the whole world to take part in. So we're very, very fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that when the British was ruling, they used to wonder how, so many people gathering in Puri without any, advertisement of the Rath Yatra or anything like that. So the British actually tried to stop Rath Yatra, and then Prabhupada understood that. And then, when he had the first Rath Yatra in London, he said, British tried to stop it in India, so I brought it out of India to go to London.
It's very interesting as well, that first Rath Yatra. There was a newspaper article saying something like, I don't know, Madhusudan Babu, you might remember, the article's headline was Rath Yatra conquers Lord Nelson or something like that.
Nelson's column.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember the exact headline, but yeah, it's something like that. That conquers Lord Nelson, yeah. So, because he was in Trafalgar Square, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, sorry, Nabi. You can see me now.
Oh, sorry, I never keep that on. 1 second. Hare Krishna, right.
Okay. It's okay. Just relaxing.
Nice.
Yeah.
You recovered from yesterday?
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was good yesterday.
No, it was good. Lasted till late night, and
yeah,
after the arti and all that, so slept well.
Yeah, that's good.
But yeah, it's good that you're doing. So yeah, carry on.
Yeah. Karuna, thank you for reading. I think we can ask Kanchan also if she's there. Is she there? She'd like to read. Kamakshi?
I'm in the room actually. Yes, I am.
Ah,
Yeah.
never too far away, huh? Kamakshi?
There's no other Kanchan. Are you calling me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. Yesterday there were 2 Kanchans. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I'm just bringing myself because this has got to magnify it.
Oh,
Okay. Is that from my father? He took
yeah,
care of.
yeah.
Okay. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai, whole glory to the assembled devotees. My father, he took care of me in such a way that I became perfectly Krishna conscious. He taught me how to play the madanga, the drum. My mother was against. Sorry, this is a bit okay. My glasses is changing. Sorry, my mother was. There were 2 teachers, one for teaching me A, B, C, D, and one for teaching me Madanga. The first one was waiting, and the other teacher was teaching me how to play on Madanga. My mother would be dissatisfied. She was angry that what is this nonsense? You are teaching Madanga? What he will do with this Madanga? But my father would say, no, he must learn a little Madanga. My father used to receive many saintly persons at our home, and to everyone of them he used to say, kindly bless my son so that he may become a servant of Radharani, Lord Krishna's eternal consort. That was his only ambition. He wanted me to be a preacher of Srimad Bhagavatam, and player of Madanga, and to become servant of Radharani. Every parent should think like that. Otherwise, one should not become a father and a mother. If due to past pious activities, one gets a good father and mother, that is a great chance for advancing in Krishna consciousness. I am very much indebted to my father, and I have dedicated my book, Krishna book, to him.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you very much. So this Madanga, I recall how there was a lot of very talented musicians who joined the Hare Krishna movement. And I can't remember his name. There was one particular devotee who, when he heard Prabhupada play the drum, Madanga, he was astounded. He'd never heard anything like it. And he was really a professional musician who was expert at drums as well. So he was relaying how Prabhupada could play the Madanga in so many different styles, different ways, in order to please the Supreme Lord. So this was very revealing, very interesting. And the second point about his father, Krishna, he dedicated the whole Krishna book to his father. It's quite amazing, quite amazing. Srila Prabhupada became a student of philosophy. Actually, was it philosophy? At the Scottish Churches College in 1916. It was a prestigious college. In 1918, when he was in the 3rd year of his college, his father, Gaur Mohan De, got him married to Radharani Dutt. In 1920, Mahatma Gandhi announced the non-cooperation movement. So this is in order to fight against the British through non-violent means. The call was to give up English education, English court, and English manufactured goods. Many people accepted the call and joined the movement. Influential leaders surrendered their honorary posts and titles. Motilal Nehru, Rajendra Prasad, C.R. Das, Vallabhbhai Patel, and Raj Gopalachari were some of them. Motilal Nehru, the father of Jawaharlal Nehru, was a very rich lawyer, earning $500 every day. Mr. C.R. Das, another lawyer, was earning $50,000 every month. They renounced everything and joined Gandhiji's movement. Gandhiji appealed to his countrymen to reject all foreign cloth and wear only khadi produced from India's own cottage industry. He organized public meetings and asked people to come forth and reject their imported cloth. On the spot, people would throw down heaps of foreign cloths and set them ablaze in a great bonfire. Students came out of government educational institutions. Abhay Charan was one of the students who gave up his English education and joined Gandhiji's movement, and he started wearing khadi. So that was 1918 for maybe 2-3 years, or 1920 for a couple of years. But then Abhay Charan met his spiritual master, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada, and this changed the course of his life. A close friend of Prabhupada, Narendranath Mulik, insisted he come and meet a sadhu from Mayapur. Initially, Prabhupada was reluctant to go. There was many bogus sadhus, and Prabhupada had very bad experiences with them. Because his father used to invite the sadhus, and Prabhupada would observe them, and their behavior wasn't always very good. So the impression he had of these sadhus was not a good impression. But his friends insisted. Together, they entered the ashram, where sitting with his back very straight, they found Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, a studious-looking man, wearing sannyas robes and small round spectacles. Srila Prabhupada and his friend both bowed down on the floor before him. While the two men were still rising and preparing to sit, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta immediately said to them, "You are educated young men. Why don't you preach the message of Krishna all over the world?" Srila Prabhupada could hardly believe what he had just heard. They had not even exchanged any words. Yet the sadhu was telling them what they should do. He asked, so Prabhupada challenged the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He challenged him immediately. But who will hear your message? So long as we are a dependent country, first India must become independent, because this was the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi. How can we spread our Indian culture if we are under British rule? And it's a good question. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati replied in a quiet, deep voice, "The message of Krishna cannot wait for a change in Indian politics. It is not dependent on who ruled. The teachings of Bhagavad Gita are so important, so exclusively important, that it cannot wait." So that answer by Bhaktisiddhanta was a huge impression, left a huge impression on Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada immediately said to his friend, "The message of Bhagavad Gita is in the hands of a very expert person." And Srila Prabhupada would often say that at that meeting in 1922, he immediately accepted Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati as his spiritual master. And then 11 years later, 1933, he took initiation, formal Diksha, into the Gaudiya Math. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he was a very powerful preacher. We've talked about him in the past. And he built up the Hare Krishna movement in Bharat, throughout Bharat, with 64 Gaudiya Maths. And he had many sannyasis. I think he had 18 sannyasis. And he had something like 50,000 or 60,000 disciples. He had a lot of disciples. One of them is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So what happened was Prabhupada was known as Abhay Charan, and the name given to him by Bhaktisiddhanta was A.C. Bhaktivedanta Abhay Charanaravinda. So he didn't change it much. After taking initiation from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada was contributing to his spiritual master's mission by donating money as he was doing earlier, but now he wanted to do more to please his spiritual master. Now, Prabhupada was actually, he had a business of selling medicines, and he actually would make up his own medicines, which were very powerful, very effective. And it said that if he had continued down that route and he hadn't been stopped by Krishna, he probably would have been one of the first billionaires in this world because he was so good. But it so happened that his business kept failing. Either the employees kept stealing from him or something kept going wrong. And then later on, Prabhupada realized that this was actually the arrangement of the Supreme Lord to take him away from the business world and into the spiritual world. So he wrote to his spiritual master, because he was a grihastha, he was married, he had children. Can't remember how many now, four or five children. And he had a business. But many of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disciples were sannyasis, or they were full-time members of the Gaudiya Math. They would live in the Gaudiya Math, they would serve their spiritual master every day, constantly. So he, being a grihastha, was feeling that he's not doing enough. So he wrote to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in December 1936, humbly asking if he could offer some direct service. And what happened was, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur left the planet. He died. He, of course, the spiritual master never dies, but he left the planet, went back to the spiritual world. And 2 weeks later, the letter must have been written. It was posted, and he received the letter 2 weeks after the spiritual master passed away. And in the letter, to his astonishment, it reiterated the same order that he was given in 1922 when he first met his spiritual master. You try to preach whatever you have learned from me to the English-speaking people of the world. That will be good for you and for the people to whom you preach. That is my instruction to you. So Srila Prabhupada took this as his final order from his spiritual master. He decided to make it his life's mission. Thank goodness, because of that, we are here. So if any devotee like to interject, please do so. In the years that followed, Srila Prabhupada wrote a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, that commentary was later on sold by his Dharmapatni for a cup of tea. So that really triggered Srila Prabhupada leaving the home. Anyway, he continued assisting the Gaudiya Math in his work, and in 1944 he started this Back to Godhead magazine. This magazine was dedicated to persuading the general public that material life was not the only reality, and that they should be preparing for the real goal of life, returning back to the spiritual world, and again linking with our original God, our loving Father. This was not easy thing to do, because that was round about, it was when the war, Second World War was going on. Yeah, mid-40s, and paper was, there was a huge shortage of paper. But somehow or other, Prabhupada would always convince the publishers to print his Back to Godhead magazines, and he would distribute them himself. So he would write, publish, distribute. He did everything. It was a one-man band. He was amazing. So this is a very nice painting of him doing the proofreading as well. Most of the people were not interested in spiritual life. Even his wife and other family members had no interest, no or little interest in the mission, in his mission. Srila Prabhupada started spending more and more time away from home, trying to carry out his preaching duties. With great effort, he established a center in Jhansi called the League of Devotees. But the members were not very active. and he later closed it down. There was actually a conspiracy against him. It was a nice building that was given to him on rent, but then somebody else wanted it. I think the mayor's wife or somebody, and there was a conspiracy to get him out. So it didn't work out in Jhansi. He actually initiated his first disciple there. I can't remember his name now, but his first disciple was in Jhansi. Srila Prabhupada decided to retire from family life. Especially, I think there was one burglary which really took a lot of the wealth out of his business. And he moved to the holy land of Vrindavan, the place where Lord Krishna displayed his childhood pastimes. He lived in a very humble and austere way in the historic medieval temple of Radha Damodar. And now he had no income, and he would eat very little. He wore old clothes, and he would spend years in study and writing. He wrote the first 3 volumes of the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam in the Radha Damodar temple. And he was very renounced, and he only collected money to print books. And there they are. That's the 3 volumes of the Srimad Bhagavatam. He got them printed. An amazing effort in difficult conditions in Bharat at that time. In 1959, he took sannyas, and he often relays how his spiritual master would come in his dream and calling him, take sannyas, and he would wake up with sweat on his forehead. He would tell his godbrothers, I just had a terrible dream. The spiritual master is calling me to take sannyas. How can I do that? So, but it happened a few times. And one of his godbrothers also suggested it to him, and he took sannyas in 1959. And a year later, he started the work on the Bhagavatam, the 18,000 verse Bhagavatam. He also wrote a book, one of his first books, Easy Journey to Other Planets, which we still distribute on the streets in London and throughout the world. As the years passed, he formulated a plan to spread the Hare Krishna movement throughout the world. This is his day of sannyas. This is his sannyas guru. What's his name? Bhakti Keshav, something like that. Madhusudan Prabhu, do you remember the name of this Maharaj? Not sure his name. And then there was 2 of them who took sannyas. There was this elderly gentleman as well, and Bhaktivedanta Swami as well. So a few days before his 69th birthday, Prabhupada set out. Okay, so for America. He got a free ticket to travel to New York from the proprietor of the Scindia Steamship Company, Sumati Muraji. In his possession was a suitcase, umbrella, supply of dry cereals. He thought he wouldn't get any vegetables, so he took some cereals with him. He took $7 worth of Indian currency. And the funny thing was, these 40 rupees, he couldn't actually convert it into dollars anyway. So actually took nothing with him. And several boxes of books.
Okay, so this is an excerpt from the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrit by Satsut Maharaj. So basically the title is Finally It's Happening. So Srila Prabhupada took a taxi down to the Kolkata port. A few friends and admirers along with his son Vrindavan accompanied him. He writes in his diary, today at 9 a.m. embarked on MV Jaladuta. Came with me Bhagwati, the Darban of Scindia, Sansir, Mr. Sen Gupta, Mr. Ali and Vrindavan. He was carrying a Bengali copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which he intended to read during the crossing. Somehow he would be able to cook on board, or if not, he could starve, whatever Krishna desired. He checked his essentials: passenger ticket, passport, visa, P-form, sponsor's address, Finally, it was happening. Srila Prabhupada boarded Jaladut cargo ship and started for West for preaching on the order of his Guru Maharaj. For thousands of years, Krishna Bhakti had been known only in India, not outside, except in twisted, faithless reports by foreigners. And the only Swamis to have reached America had been non-devotees, Mayavadi impersonalists, but now Krishna was sending Srila Prabhupada as his emissary.
Okay.
So that act took place today
Mm,
in 1965.
very nice. Thank you. And how he got this ticket was quite an adventure as well, because he had been writing to Sumati Morarji, who had been refusing. He met her secretary, and he convinced him to talk to her. So the secretary would talk to Sumati, and still she would say, "No, he'll die there. I don't want to send him there. He'll die there." Eventually, Prabhupada requested a face-to-face meeting with Sumati, and he got that. And he talked to her, and he convinced her. She was initially saying, "No, if I send you there, you will die there. What good that will do? Stay here. You're in Vrindavan. Why do you want to leave Vrindavan?" And he said, "No, I have to go. I have to fulfill my spiritual master's mission. Please let me have this one opportunity." And she was convinced. She said, "Yeah, get your papers ready, and you can join. You can. I'll give you a ticket on one of our cargo ships." So this is the Jaladuta. This is the ship that he sailed on, and this is his passport.
Mm-hmm.
And one devotee commented to Srila Prabhupada, one of his disciples, "You're looking very sad in this picture, very serious, Srila Prabhupada." And Srila Prabhupada said, "No, this is my expression of ecstasy, because I was finally going to be able to fulfill my spiritual master's order." So often Prabhupada looks a little serious, but actually inside there's all sorts of emotions going on. So maybe somebody can read. You like to read?
Okay. The Jaladuta, under the command of Captain Arun Pandya, whose wife was also aboard, left at 9 a.m. on Friday, August 13, 1965. Srila Prabhupada sat in his stuffy cabin, which rolled back and forth with the motion of the sea. He suffered from seasickness, dizziness, and vomiting. He also had 2 heart attacks, but survived by the mercy of Lord Krishna.
Yeah, that's right, because he did relay later. And it wasn't something that he actually boasted about. One devotee found this out. I can't remember how, but it was something he never even talked about. That he had 2 heart attacks on the way, and during the second one, Krishna actually appeared and comforted him. "Don't worry, you are under my protection." So, we would, if we had gone through something like this, we would be boasting, we'd be shouting from the rooftops, "Hey, I had a heart attack, and you know what? I've come to save your life." But not once did he mention in any lecture, not written in any books. But some devotee found out, I can't remember how, about this, and they asked him, and he said, "Yeah, that's right." So.
When the Jaladuta arrived in New York Harbor 37 days later, Srila Prabhupada was utterly alone. He'd come to America knowing no one, with absolutely no visible means of support, and with only the meager handful of possessions he'd carried on board the ship. He had no money, no friends, no followers, not his youth, good health, or even a clear idea of how he would accomplish his far-reaching objective to present the spiritual knowledge of the Vedas to the entire Western society.
I suppose if we can just imagine the picture, he's going to America, which was the absolute center of materialism, and facing the whole business community, the whole structure of a society, which is completely geared towards sense enjoyment, huge advertising placards, and there was this one man facing all of that. who had nothing behind him, right? If you like. He had no sponsor, no devotees, no followers, no money, nowhere, no idea where he was going. Because he said, at one point he did say, when I walked off the Boston Pier, I didn't know whether I was going to turn left or right. Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Several years later, a disciple discovered the diary Srila Prabhupada had kept during his passage from India on the steamship Jaladuta. This diary is available in the form of an e-book, the Jaladuta Diary. Inside was a poem handwritten in Bengali that Srila Prabhupada had written on board the ship just after they arrived in Boston Harbor. The poem beautifully captures Srila Prabhupada's first impressions of Western civilization and reveals his heartfelt determination to change the consciousness of America. Srila Prabhupada expressed his humble faith in Lord Sri Krishna and the special instruction of a spiritual master who had instructed him to spread the teachings of Krishna consciousness throughout the English-speaking world. My dear Lord Krishna, how will I make them understand this message of Krishna consciousness? I'm very unfortunate, unqualified, and the most fallen. Therefore, I'm seeking your benediction so I can convince them, for I am powerless to do so on my own. I'm sure that when this transcendental message penetrates their hearts, they will certainly feel enlightened and thus become liberated from all unhappy conditions of life.
It's a huge poem. It's not a huge poem. It's a nice poem. I haven't reproduced it fully here, but it's definitely worth reading and trying to understand what he was facing. Because not only all the other challenges, but he also had a very thick Bengali accent, which was not necessarily easy for a American youth to understand. And many in his classes would later comment, didn't have a clue what he was saying, but we could see what he was trying to convey, what he was, he was such a incredible gentleman. We just felt like following him, felt like doing what he said, just because of him. It wasn't the philosophy, it was just him.
This poem was written on September 18, 1965. Just 12 years later, on November the 14th, 1977, Srila Prabhupada passed away in Vrindavan, India, at the age of 81. What did Srila Prabhupada accomplish during this brief period, having begun with nothing and at an age when most are ready to retire?
So there's now a little bit of an idea of what happened, what he accomplished. And I was thinking, Madhusudan Prabhu, would you like to read? And you can comment wherever you like.
Is this from after arriving, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So after arriving in New York City in September 1965, Srila Prabhupada struggled alone for a year to establish the Krishna conscious movement. He lived simply, lectured whenever and wherever he got an opportunity, and gradually began to attract small interest in his teachings. On February the 2nd, 1966, he bought a reel-to-reel tape recorder for $54. On February 19th and 20th, he recorded his instruction to Gita Upanishad. In July of 1966, Srila Prabhupada founded a spiritual society intended for the worldwide participation. He called it the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON. At the time of incorporation, Srila Prabhupada had not attracted even one committed follower. So this is an interesting part because, you see around 1965, I can try to relate where I was and what I would be doing. But certainly, I was in Africa at that time and hadn't come to UK. But Srila Prabhupada, he lived in, at first, I think he went and stayed in Boston with a family called Mr. Agarwal. And he stayed there for a bit because that's the only contact Srimati Morarji had given given him. And then he felt he's just wasting time sitting here in Mr. Agar's house. He's got to continue with his mission. So he went to New York, and where he stayed in New York was quite rough. It was called the Bowery, that area, where hippies and drug addicts and all low down would hang about. And he had a flat there, didn't he? He shared a flat with some guy who, after Prabhupada, they acquired some equipment like tape recorder and all that, and then his books and everything. And at one time, this guy who shared the flat with, he just freaked out because he was a drug. So Prabhupada felt endangered, it wasn't safe. He left everything, and he just quickly had to leave the flat, walk out. And he left his books and everything, and then he was out on the road in New York on a cold, wintry day, So I recall those sort of scenes from reading the biography, which is quite an austerity, that Prabhupada had to go through tapasya. But then he recovered some of his stuff, and then he started again. And then I remember going to, I've only been to New York for one night only, and that was when I went to visit Trikalya in Washington a few years ago. So, when I went there, I wanted to go to this. The only place I ended up in New York with my family and Ramdas, Trikalya's son, and we ended up in a hotel near Ground Zero at 12 o'clock at midnight. We couldn't go to sleep. Got out, went for a walk. The next morning, we spent a bit of time. We went to Brooklyn Temple. And then by evening, I had promised myself that if ever I go to New York, I wanted to go to this Tompkins Square Garden. So it says here, in New York's Tompkins Square Park, under a big tree, Srila Prabhupada chanted the Hare Krishna mantra, and slowly many people joined him in his kirtan. This tree is still preserved as a monument and is considered to be of spiritual significance. In the storefront, in the 2nd Avenue, the Prabhupada conducted the classes on the Bhagavad Gita. So when I went to New York with my family, and my son, my daughter was only about 16 or so, I think, quite young anyway. And that's the only, I didn't have any interest in seeing the Times Square, or we did have a glimpse of it, but and none of the other things, in New York, but the only thing I wanted to go there was to see this storefront, which was on the 2nd Avenue, and it's called the Matchless Gift, and then Tompkins Square Garden. So I did manage to go to the 2nd Avenue, and I had a look at the store, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. It's like for me, it was special, because I read the biography and I had understood how Prabhupada, managed to give classes in a place like that's 22nd Avenue. And then Tompkins Square Garden, I managed to get there at 9 o'clock at night. And we had to leave New York just after that, just then we were in a car, and I just managed to quickly park the car near the Tompkins Square. We managed to find where the Tompkins Square was, park the car, started running around, And I said, there are so many trees. How can we know which tree was the one that Prabhupada sat under? And then my son and Ramdas, they're all running around thinking, where are we going to find this tree? And amazingly enough, as we were looking at so many trees, there was one tree with a garland on it. Would you believe it? And I thought, that's the tree. There's got to be that tree. And we quickly ran to it, and we sat, and there's a plaque there. The city council has put a plaque there, said this is the tree under which Srila Prabhupada started his Hare Krishna movement. So they've honored it, and somebody must put a garland there every time or something. So luckily it was there. We managed to find it quickly, and we had a bit of time to sit under the tree and just for me personally anyway, that was important. And my son and all that, Ramdas, and just sat there also, just appreciated. And that was 9, 10 o'clock at night, in the dark. How are we going to find the tree in the dark? You know, but we found it, and that was my kind of experience. And then we left New York after that. So I've done my bit. That's the only place I want to see in New York, and it's still there. You know, so 22nd Avenue is another place, and obviously Tompkins Square Garden. You know, I mean the Brooklyn Temple, where we had prasad and bit of kirtan. So in just one day and one night, I managed to achieve that. And to me, that was quite a bit, you know. And that's the only my visit ever in New York.
Thanks for sharing
So,
that. That was really good.
yeah, actually, there's a bit, you know, I would like to read this bit. This is actually from the biography of Prabhupada, and it's in New York City. Could you try again? Oh, sorry. This is actually a letter, or like Prabhupada, right, in New York City, April the 9th, 1969. And that date is important because that's the day I came to UK. Would you believe it? 1969. Prabhupada traveled to New York City, the birthplace of his Krishna Conscious Society, where his movement had been growing for nearly 3 years. So, is there anything more from there where you're written? Conduct the class in Bhagavad Gita. Yeah.
That's the
That's a tree.
Yeah, go and show the pictures. Yeah, that's the tree. And there's another picture like that where he's sitting with kartalas.
Right, that's right, yeah. But just before you carry on, even when he landed, he went to Boston, Boston Bay. He went to, because the sponsor was a Agarwal. Agarwal's father was in Mathura, and Prabhupada met him and said, look, I need to go to America. Get your son to write me a sponsorship letter. So that son wrote a sponsorship letter, and then Prabhupada went to their home in Boston, where he had married an American lady called Sally Agarwal.
Yeah.
And then Prabhupada stayed there for maybe a couple of months, and Sally would recollect with great affection how Prabhupada would deal with them, you know. There would be meat in the fridge, but Prabhupada would never bother them, you know. And she knew that, you know, he is a sadhu. She also made a comment that my husband had written many letters of sponsorship. Nobody had ever come. But this is the first person who actually came, you know. And that was very interesting. And Prabhupada moved to New York, and initially he rented a flat, as you said, and then he moved in with somebody, and then that didn't work out. And then finally they got this storefront, the Matchless Gift. So that's very, very interesting. And how he started? Simply started chanting in the park, one man on his own, and then people started coming around him. And that's how he started this Hare Krishna movement, which is fascinating, really.
Yeah, he didn't have any instruments, right? He only had a pair of kartalas. But
that's right.
When everybody heard him singing, they would bring their own, you know, bongos and drums and guitars and kind of just sit there and jam along with Prabhupada. You know? It's just amazing, you know. So on the early visit, one of the early visitors of Srila Prabhupada in the storefront was Allen Ginsberg, a famous poet. Allen had been captivated by the Hare Krishna mantra several years before, when he had first encountered it at the Kumbh Mela festival in Allahabad in Bharat. And he had been chanting it often ever since. When he heard about Srila Prabhupada, he came to the storefront to meet him. On September 8, 1966, Srila Prabhupada conducted the first initiation ceremony in the storefront. By 1967, Srila Prabhupada was ready to expand his mission beyond New York to San Francisco, Los Angeles, Boston, Buffalo, and then on to other countries. He sent his disciples to London, where contact was made with George Harrison, with the pop group The Beatles. And that was Shyam Sundar, you know, who wrote the wonderful book as well, you know, which I've read and actually expanded on that experience of meeting George Harrison, you know, Shyam Sundar's book, Chasing the Rhinos with the Swami. So I don't know if you read that book, but it's a wonderful book to read as well. George Harrison became very interested and he released a record during chanting, which reached #1 position in the UK popular music charts. This exposed millions of people to the Mahamantra and greatly pleased Srila Prabhupada, who flew into London and personally met George. Later, George donated a large manor house in the English countryside. Srila Prabhupada established 108 temples throughout the world with the help of his disciples, and also established various Vedic projects, schools called Gurukuls, where children were trained in Krishna consciousness from the very early age, cow protection programs on several of his larger projects to care for cows and bulls, and even in the productive life were over. He's set up an academy for artists who painted fabulous devotional artworks for his books. He also established the Bhaktivedanta Institute made of disciples, experts in science and maths, whose mission was to disprove various atheistic theories and disseminate Vedic knowledge. He wrote several books and initiated thousands of disciples. So it's quite a bit of achievement, you know, for Prabhupada.
Mm. And there's more.
Yeah. He traveled from continent to continent, country to country, city to city, town to town, preaching the message of Krishna.
And wherever he landed, these personal servants would always say, he would just carry on where he left off. So if it was Mangalarti time where he landed, he would be at Mangalarti. If it was, lunchtime, he would have lunch. If it was evening, he would have the evening program going on. He never suffered from any jet lag. You know, it's just a transcendental personality. And
Yeah.
the personal servants would say, oh, we struggled like anything, you know, jet lag, this lag. The Prabhupada, no problem. Took it in his
No.
stride.
Amazing, you know, amazing. He arranged for massive food distribution programs, millions of free plates of vegetarian foodstuff spiritualized by offering to Krishna has been distributed to needy people around the globe. Thus, Srila Prabhupada fulfilled the prophecies of Lord Chaitanya. All over the world, the words Hare Krishna, Hare Rama have been heard on the streets, at festivals, on the radio, and on television. The holy names have gone to every town and village. It was Srila Prabhupada's faith and devotion that brought about this colossal transformation.
Okay. So, because previously, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had predicted the holy names will be chanted in every town and village. And around the time of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, just before Bhaktisiddhanta, everybody thought that this is just a saying by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's never going to actually happen. Because, you know, how is it going to be possible around the world, every town and village? And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati sent people outside of India, outside of Bharat, to London, Bon Maharaj, a few other devotees. But they had very little impact because they were mainly preaching to the aristocracy, you know, the wealthy people. They never tried to go beyond that. So they had a little bit of success, but not much. And then somehow or other, Prabhupada, he had this in his heart, the order of the Guru. And of course, it's said, isn't it, that the Guru's order is a blessing. The blessing is in the order. So if one follows the order, the blessing is already in that order to be fulfilled. So somehow or other, Prabhupada did it and this is why, you know, there's nobody in our sampradaya has ever done this. There's no guru who has ever achieved anything close to this. At such a ripe old age, he leaves Vrindavan, goes to a foreign land, knowing nobody, having nothing, and yet over just a matter of 11 years, he completely changed the face of this world, really.
Yeah.
Every town and village. So
Yeah, I know many, especially in Bharat, you know, they really glorify Vivekananda a lot, you know, because he was probably one of the ones first invited to one of these multi-faith kind of function in America or conference. And he made an impact, you know, when he spoke about how I think there was a pile of books or something, and then Bhagavad Gita was at the bottom and all the other was on the top and all that. Then he made a comment that, you know, that is the foundation and the something like that, I hear. But people glorify Vivekananda a lot because many in America and the aristocratic, like, you know, people did recognize his scholarly and intellectual kind of input, and they gave importance to the Vedic knowledge to a certain extent, but not that they became Krishna conscious or devotees or took to any serious kind of study, you know, as such. But he just found a mission like that, and then, but there was very much an impersonalistic kind of Mayavadi kind of teaching anyway. But this broke the barrier, and that's why when we sing, you know, this pranam to Srila Prabhupada, you know, that Namaham Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutara Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami iti Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani. That means Gauravani means the message of Lord Chaitanya. Gauravani Pracharine. Prachar means you're preaching the message, the Gauravani, Gaura's Vani, Lord Chaitanya's instructions and mission. Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi. That means you are destroying the Sunyavadi, the voidism, which exists, you know, atheistic and all that view. Sunyavadi, Pracharine. Nirvisa Sunyavadi, Paschata Desa Tarine. That means you are also destroying the atheistic view and all that. So it's a pranam that we offer to Srila Prabhupada. And there's nobody else has ever stepped out of Bharat. You know, you think about Lord Chaitanya 5,000 years ago, 500 years ago, you know, he traveled in South India, you know, and all over Bharat, more or less, with his preaching, you know, and he was very young. And then he stayed in Jagannath Puri in the later part of his life, never out of Bharat as such, but he knew that somebody else would, a special personality would come and do that. So the glory goes to Srila Prabhupada. But he is so humble that, you know, the whole world became, everybody became Hare Krishna. Everybody knew through George Harrison, everybody knew Hare Krishna, and everybody started to think this is like a cult Krishna, but hardly anybody ever got to know much about Srila Prabhupada. It's now his glories are unfolding. But you look at any other preachers who've gone out in India, and these bogus gurus, you know, you get them, you get to know them first. Yeah, everybody knows, yeah, Sai Baba, yeah, okay. Or this Rajneesh, yeah, okay. But they're the ones who become famous, but not Krishna or not anybody else. But Prabhupada, you know, he is obviously a bona fide acharya, so he transformed people's lives, you know. But in his biographies, the wonderful things are obviously when Prabhupada did little things like, you know, he would leave a bowl full of gulab jamuns, you know, in the storefront, and the disciple would just come and relish and just enjoy eating those gulab jamuns, you know. They were later on called as ISKCON bullets by the disciples. They just love it, you know. Prabhupada just fed them prasadam, cook them puris. He would personally cook the puris and sabjis and feed these devotees.
Good.
So amazing.
You're right. Like they would do a Sunday program. Sometimes there would be 70, 80 people there. And he would cook how many offerings? How many items? He would cook so many items within an hour or two.
Yeah.
And he would be serving it. And there was one devotee, Stanley. He would eat as much chapati as Prabhupada would give him, he would eat. 20 chapatis, 30 chapatis. Prabhupada would just feed him. And then eventually Prabhupada would say to him, no, enough. You've had enough. And then one time, I think Satsarup Maharaj was the one who after the prasadam was finished, he was looking around thinking, who's going to clear this all up now? And he realized, oh, Prabhupada's going to do it. Or Swamiji, they knew him at that time. So he volunteered and said, can I help? And Prabhupada eventually said, oh, phew, finally, somebody's going to help me. So in that way, Prabhupada just gave, didn't he? He didn't take, he just gave and he gave and he gave. Amazing. And this, go on, Karen.
And this is the first time you can see that there is a Bharatiya who's gone out. He didn't want to go out, with the intention of I'm going there to make money or name, fame, or some big job or anything like that. He just wanted to just give. That's what he did,
Just give. Yeah. No name, fame. You're right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to. The last picture it's a little disturbing, of course, because we don't like to see this. But the thing is, the Prabhupada he didn't stop the translations to the Bhaktivedanta purports until the very, very end. He just carried on. His mission was there, and nothing stopped him. Even at the time of leaving the body, he continued with the translation work. So he really cared for it. He gave everything. He gave everything, absolutely everything. And we are very, very grateful to him, because without him, where would we possibly be?
And as we go through Prabhupada's biography, or what we learn more, like even these 2 sessions we had with Shrutakirti, and having read Shyam Sundar's books and all that, and in how it's a little conversations that Prabhupada had, and his questions and answers and all that are so kind of mind blowing, so you get amazed, and it's just, you relish that, it becomes a real person in your own personal life as to how you see how he would answer. Sometimes you think, how would Prabhupada deal with this? And you think, this is amazing. This is how Prabhupada would answer this. Maybe, like for example, like one disciple, one of them just came and say, "Oh, Prabhupada, I'm a vegetarian." And Prabhupada would say, "Yeah, oh yeah, that's good. Even an elephant is a vegetarian." And the way you would kind of deal with it to make the disciples realize, and then bring them on to a next level, and understanding Krishna consciousness to help them is really amazing,
Can't hear you, Prabhu.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me
Sorry.
now? Yeah. So I was just saying how, Prabhupada, he was difficult to understand because of his accent, but somehow or other, they would see his spiritual potency, his humility, his incredible character. And I remember many devotees saying he was the most beautiful looking personality that they would ever have seen. He had such amazing features. And they would just follow him for that reason. They just loved him. They They didn't know much about Krishna or the philosophy. They knew
Yeah.
Prabhupada. They just gave their whole life to Prabhupada. So actually,
Oh, can I just add something?
yeah, Kamakshi.
Yeah, listening to all this, I said Prabhupada was giver. He had never had any ulterior motive behind what he was doing. And I think that's why he became so successful spreading Krishna consciousness.
Definitely one of the factors. Definitely. There was one time, just before he came to the West, he used to visit the temple in Shantipur, Advaitacharyas. And he used to go to the temple, and years later, one of the priests of that temple came to Mayapur, and he was telling this story. So this priest would meet him, and eventually the priest asked him, "You always come, and you always got tears in your eyes. Who are you?" And he said something like, "I'm the fallen servant of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, and he's given me an impossible mission." So he has told me to go to the West, and I've come here to get the blessings of Advaita Acharya. So then, years later, these American and Russian devotees were coming to Shantipur, and this Pujari would be wondering, how did these devotees know? And then one time they gave him a back to Godhead, and he saw Prabhupada's picture. He said, "This is him. This is the man who used to come years ago. Are you his disciples?" "Yes, we're his disciples." And then he came to Mayapur, and he told the whole story, how Prabhupada used to, he was so fixed on following the order of his guru, even though it's such a tough order. But the blessing is in the order, isn't it?
Yeah, because at that time, even I think up to the 70s and 80s, you didn't have any sadhus leaving Bharat, because it was supposed to be inauspicious to leave the land of Bharat to travel across the ocean. So, especially in Jainism, you didn't have any Jain sadhus leaving Bharat and coming out of Bharat. So yeah, he just ignored all norms and just followed the order.
I wanted to invite devotees, Gopal, if you're there, Sulochan Mataji, Kaushalya, Karuna Bandar, Janaki, you might not be able to speak, to just give us your...
Yes, Prabhu, I'm here.
Kaushalya Mataji. So you'd like to say something about Prabhupada?
Prabhupada was very, very great person. I can't say it in English, but unhone jagatariya. Understand?
You can translate it.
Prabhupada ne jagatariya, sara jagatariya.
You saved the world.
Greatest.
Yes,
Save the
yes,
world.
Prabhu.
Save the world. Nice one.
Yeah,
Yes,
delivered the Jagat.
yes,
The whole
jagatariya.
Yeah.
Good.
Very good. Yeah. Is anybody saying it? Yeah.
Karuna Bandar, would you like to?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna to all devotees. Srila Prabhupada, just a glimpse of him, and our lives were transformed. So, how powerful, how transcendental, how divine he was. Can't just imagine that.
And the amazing thing is, even after he's left, he's still touching the hearts of everybody who comes across this movement,
Yeah.
Shall I just read this is the humility of Prabhupada, In this book, this Srila Prabhupada Lila Mitra said, a devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, devotee asked, may we publish pictures of you without tilak? Yes, he replied, my Guru Maharaj has been recorded without tilak. You have seen that picture where he's looking up from his books at his working table. Yes, the devotee replied, I have seen that picture. I have seen you look in that very same way, with the very same expression as in the picture of your Guru Maharaj. You have only seen the glitter, Prabhupada corrected. He is the gold. I am only iron. Iron can never be gold, but you have seen the glitter of real gold. So what he's saying, I'm nothing without, you know, his spiritual master. He's the gold. He said, you know, I'm only just the glitter of that gold. There's the humility of Prabhupada, you know.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Absolutely amazing. And he would always, if somebody would praise him, he would always give the credit to his guru. And really, that's the perfect disciple. He not just follows the order of his guru, but he also gives all the credit to his guru. So that was a very good example for everybody, you know.
And I like this bit, which is the next bit, which actually makes us realize in how we see our own, you know, future or past or whatever. But he says, one afternoon, a renowned astrologer visited Prabhupada and offered to read his palm. No, Prabhupada replied, I'm finished with that, but you may read my disciples' palms. The astrologer read the palms of several devotees present, made his predictions, and then left. The devotees turned to Sri Prabhupada, wondering what to make of it. As soon as you clap your hands in front of the deities during Aarti, Prabhupada said, smiling, all the lines on your palm are changed. So I like that bit where, you know, astrology, sometimes we go to astrology, what's my future? Will I have any children? Will I have a big with this, that, and the other, you know? But Prabhupada is saying, he said, you go to the deities, you chant, you clap your hands, you chant, and your future changes, you know. So this is a good, clear message to us, you know.
Nice, yeah, nice that
Nice
you
to share some of these
share
things.
that one. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot about Prabhupada. Anybody else would like to say anything? Normally we would read offerings. So we're doing it a little bit differently this time. We've talked through his life history, a glimpse of his life history. But there's so much. There's six-part volume to his Lilamrit, his biography, Prabhupada Lilamrit, which is very amazing reading. Once you start reading that, you won't put it down until you've finished, and then you'll read it again and again. And many of his leading disciples have written biographies about Prabhupada and their experiences with Prabhupada. So much nectar is there about Srila Prabhupada. And it's worth tapping into this nectar, because we realize what an amazing personality came to the West to completely transform the lives of the fallen souls like ourselves. Sulochan Mataji, would you like to say anything?
Hare Krishna, Guruji. Dhanyavad.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Please accept my humble obeisance to all devotees. Recently I was thinking how Srila Prabhupada, because of Srila Prabhupada, we all could have temples in our all houses now. And out of India also we could do devotional service only because of his mercy.
Very good. Very good.
And the books Srila Prabhupada which has written are they are the treasures now.
Yeah. They contain such nectar.
It's been said that there'll be the guidebooks, you know, for generations to come.
Mm.
and the law books. Yeah.
Law books for 10,000 years, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bhakti, what would you like to say? What would you like to say about Prabhupada?
She won my heart last night.
She's amazing. She's amazing. Oh, there she is.
You have to ask her to sing again because I just was really like, I thought,
There's only one singer. There's only one singer in this
and the
format.
way she says, Prabhuji, oh my God, so sweet.
Yeah, no, she's amazing. There's only one singer on this format, in this forum, and that's Bhakti.
Prabhuji,
Yes.
I want to say something.
Yes.
I have one question.
Okay.
Lots of questions.
Why Prabhupada was very happy?
Why he was happy? That's a really nice question. Because he was always with God, always with Krishna. One time, have you been to Mayapur? Do you remember Mayapur? When? Yeah.
Yeah.
They have these beautiful deities of Radha Madhav and the Asta Sakhis, the 8 gopis. So at that time, they only had Radha Madhav. And then they wanted to place Prabhupada's seat somewhere, his Vyasasan. So they said to Prabhupada, we're going to put your Vyasasan all the way at the back. But I am afraid that is too far because you're too far from Krishna. And Prabhupada replied, I have never been far from Krishna. I am always close to Krishna. So that's why he's always happy. At one time he said to his disciples, there's never been a moment when I've forgotten Krishna. So when one remembers Krishna, one is always happy. Do you remember Krishna? So you're always happy?
Yeah.
Just like that. Prabhupada is always happy because he's always with Krishna. He's never away from Krishna. Even when he was with Krishna, Krishna one time said to him, I want you to go to earth, this world where we live. I want you to go there. And Prabhupada would say, no, I'm not going to leave you. And Krishna would say, yes, you have to go. You have to help others. But Prabhupada said, I will forget you. And Krishna said to him, no, you'll never forget me. I'm always with you. That's why he's always happy. Krishna's with him all the time.
Okay.
Good question. You always have nice questions. Thank you, Bhakti. So,
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. So if Pitambar, you could say a few things about Prabhupada. Are you there? Just give a minute. Wait. No, sometimes it's working.
Chat. There's a chat there.
Oh, okay. Okay, unless anybody's got any questions
No
or
mic,
comments. Okay, no mic, no problem. Unless there's any questions or any comments. Roma? Yeah, Roma, you want to say anything about Prabhupada? She might be busy.
Yes, I was just listening. It's very, very interesting for me. I have some books and I'm reading very slowly. But I wanted to ask about yesterday festival. Why is date? Because last year it was 25th of August. This year is earlier. Why is changing dates every time? About moon or something else?
Yeah, that's because every year there are a few days less because we follow the lunar calendar, and every 3.5 years roughly, extra month appears. That's called Pushottam Mas, and that extra month appears in September actually. This year. So next year's Janmashtami will be in September, because we will have an extra month, and then every year that gets reduced by about 10 days or so, 8 days, 9 days, like that. So that's why, because we follow the lunar calendar,
Okay.
not the solar calendar. No,
Yeah,
we follow the moon. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
So-
thinking maybe just about moon, yeah. Because last year it was my granddaughter's birthday and I was so happy, and I was surprised why this year is not the same date. Thank you very much.
And that month, when it comes, it's called Pushottam Mas. It's very auspicious. Any bhakti you do during the month of Pushottam, that
Yeah.
bhakti is multiplied many times. So that month, like Kartik, yeah, even more than Kartik. So that
Okay.
month we will do satsangs every evening.
Okay.
So, thank you for asking. Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
very much. Very interesting.
Just to, I don't know whether Aruna will let you know. It's her daughter's birthday. She shares it with Prabhupada. And I think she's so lucky.
Ah, very
Aruna's
nice.
daughter.
What's her
Yeah.
name?
It's Jana.
It's what?
Jana, Jana.
Jana. Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Okay.
Mhm.
And how old is she?
28 today.
And I thought you were only 21.
Yeah. I
And
wish.
also,
I really wish. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
I'm sorry what I'm interrupting. I just remember what in Lithuania, 1st of September is Teacher's Day. It's very, very famous for Prabhupada.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's interesting to know. Thank you, Roma. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so if there's nobody else, then we can go to the Nashinga Kavach and chant Karuna Bandar. Would you like to?